So here we go. I'm back at it again. Recently, I moved out of my sister's house at the very edge of the world back to beautiful sunny Aberdeen, Washington, and I had a challenge for myself. My challenge was to set up a decently soundproof and acoustic treated studio space inside of the second bedroom of my rental house without doing any permanent construction or otherwise violating the terms of my lease. I vlogged the entire process from start to finish as I was doing the work. This will be part 2 of the vlog. If you missed out on part 1, a link will be available so you can check that out. It has been an adventure to say the least. There were some mistakes made in the process, and there were some changes made to my original design. Some compromises had to be made in order to keep the project on budget and to make the design work inside of this space. Maybe the real recording studio was the friends that we made along the way. So this is part 2. Let's jump right back into it with the drywall mud being freshly finished.
So the first layer of drywall in here is complete. It's been a great success so far. I was kind of bad at documenting the process of doing the drywall, but as you can tell, it's all done. And again, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about how to do the drywall in this video, because that's obviously not the scope of the video that I'm trying to make here. So if you're curious about that, I encourage you to research it on your own time. I kind of do drywall and painting work as my day job, so it's nothing new to me. I didn't do a super thorough, awesome job on it, obviously. I just wanted to make sure that all the seams between the sheets were sealed up, and that's the biggest requirement for soundproofing, is just making sure that you take care of all the gaps and crevices. It's actually kind of a relief just doing a drywall job for myself and not having to make it look all nice and pretty for a customer or something. So I didn't put a lot of effort into making it aesthetically pleasing necessarily. I didn't even bother spotting the screws. We're going to slather up all the exposed drywall with a layer of that carpet glue. That's the next step, but we have to wait for all the drywall mud to be dry first before we do that, so it's probably something I'm going to have to wait until tomorrow or the next day to get started on. The carpet glue gives off a lot of really nasty fumes too, so I'm going to have to make sure that I'm wearing a respirator for the whole thing and also ventilating out the room so the fumes don't build up inside the rest of the house. So other than that, it should be a pretty easy process. After I have the carpet glue all over the walls, then we're going to do a little bit of a sound test. And I'm going to plug in a guitar and an amp and play something really loud inside of here and have a friend stand outside and see how loud it is outside of the house and kind of evaluate the need for a second layer of drywall on top of this, because we can still do a second layer. We might not need to, but that was part of the original plan, was to do 2 layers of drywall, so we might end up doing that after all. We might decide that this is good enough how it is. I'm not really sure how it's going to work out yet. You can already tell that the soundproofing is working to some degree. One thing I've noticed that isn't so great is it's definitely getting a lot more echoey inside of here. So I've created sort of a reverberation echo chamber. So I would say that probably some sound dampening, like some acoustic foam panels, are probably going to be pretty necessary if I'm going to be recording things in here on a microphone. We're going to want to cut down on some of those reflected sound waves. It's just too small of a space now, and we have directly opposing walls. So kind of for the acoustic treatment, we're going to have to do a little bit to deaden the reverberation inside of the room. I don't know, you might even be able to tell just with me talking right now into my phone's microphone, you might be able to tell that we have some pretty bad reflections going on inside the space now. But I do believe, as far as soundproofing from sounds outside and keeping the sounds that I make inside of here from carrying to the outside of the house, I think that we're on the right track and we're doing a great job so far.
The steps I took to finish up the window plug were basically exactly the same as the walls, only on a smaller scale. I screwed the drywall onto the framework using leftover pieces from the walls, so we have a few seams to tape and mud. Flip the whole thing over, put insulation between the studs as they were, sandwich it together with the rest of the drywall, tape and mud this side. Then we will butter it up with carpet glue once the mud is dry, and eventually paint the entire thing once the carpet glue is dry. So now I'm in here doing the carpet glue on the walls. Again, this is just to add a little bit of extra mass to the surface. And I'm just going off the recommendation of other YouTube videos that I've watched about the soundproofing process. Here is the product that we're using. I would suggest anybody who's going to copy me use a respirator. I just took mine off for a minute, but it's just reeking of glue fumes in here. So pretty simple process. You can do this as aesthetically pleasing or not as you want. I just dip a little bit on the knife and then just spread it on the surface. Just try to get good coverage. And then it's going to leave some high spots, and I'll just kind of gently drag across it and knock down the high spots. I'm doing a terrible job for the camera right now. But for me, it doesn't have to look great. It just has to be functional, is all. So you can take your time and do it really nice, or you can just kind of hurry up and get a bunch of it on the wall. So far, I got a few walls done, and I've used almost half the bucket. So we'll see. We might have to go and buy another bucket of this to finish the project. It's kind of some expensive stuff, at like $60 for this little bucket. So we'll see if we can do it all in one. I was going to trust the square footage estimate on the bucket, but I would have ended up buying like 4 of these or something, and I just wasn't sure how much of it I was actually going to use. So that's what we're doing here. It's not terribly hard work, but as you can see, got one wall done, ceiling still need done, working on this wall, having a good time.
I'm just saying, we need to legalize glue, man. It's got other purposes besides just mind expansion.
Seriously though, wear a respirator and work in a well-ventilated area. This stuff is not good for your health. The same goes for any sort of paint or adhesive you might be using. We take that stuff pretty seriously here. We had just enough glue to cover the interior walls and ceiling, and now we're all out of this first bucket. I don't think that I'm going to buy a second bucket yet. I think that we're going to do a sound test first and evaluate how effective our soundproofing is so far before I invest in any more materials, because already this project is getting pretty expensive and I don't want to do any more than is necessary. We're just going to put a little bit of paint on the walls. Not doing a super amazingly great paint job here. Just getting some paint over the top of this carpet glue. And yeah, it chose nice green to go with, so we don't have to worry about hanging up a green screen over the walls. Most of the walls will already be green. And yeah, there's going to be other stuff on top of this. There's probably going to be some studio foam and whatnot, just for some sound absorption. But we're just going to paint the walls green, just for fun. And if we have to hang a green screen over the top of other stuff that goes on top of the walls, that's fine. I just thought that it would be cool to have most of it be green. Okay, so it's a few days later now. Things are really starting to come together as far as doing our first sound test. As you can see, it's painted a beautiful green inside of here. And again, that's because I probably will be doing some filming with green screen. And I figured it would be cool to make the entire room a green screen. Again, definitely not a super necessary step. We got this foam mattress topper. I'm going to use that for a little bit of sound absorption inside of here, because you can probably tell it's kind of really echoey when you're inside the box. So we're going to have to do some acoustic treatment to the space. I was just down at dang old Wally World earlier, and I found this for about $15. So we're going to cut that up into several different squares and strategically place them
for our sound test, I'm probably just going to open it up and unfold it in here and see how it does. And also, let me grab the light. So just now we got the window plug in place, and it was kind of a heck of a job. And you might be able to notice that there's a split in the middle now, because we got halfway through getting it in here and we realized that it wouldn't fit all the way around the corner in this tight little space that we have. So we just decided we were going to cut it right in half. So that's actually 2 pieces in there now. I screwed a little carrying handle down here on the bottom just to kind of make it easier to lift these and get these into place. They're pretty heavy as it is. So the window is a little bit more sealed up now. We're going to get rid of these regular room curtains. We're going to put our moving blanket curtain up over the top of this space, and hopefully that will work for a little bit more sound deadening around the window. We've got another moving blanket to put over the doorway, and a third moving blanket is going to become the actual doorway to the studio enclosure. And that's what we'll be working on next, and that should be the last step before I do a sound test. Originally, I was going to have a friend sit inside of there and play a song on the guitar and sing really loud, and then I was going to go stand outside and see how it sounded, but my homie already took off for the day, so I'm just going to put my Bluetooth speaker inside of there and crank up some really loud song, and then go stand outside and see what the difference is between having it playing really loud inside of here, and maybe I'll put the speaker in the next room over just for some comparison and to see how good of a job we did. So this is what the moving blanket looks like. They're really big. They're pretty heavy blanket. They come pretty well recommended for soundproofing purposes. And this is what it looks like when I have it all done up to the right shape and size for the doorway. I just folded it a couple times until it was the right dimensions, and then I kind of stuck some wire through it and just kind of wired it together. And you know, you could use like a big safety pin. You could sew it with a needle and thread if you wanted to. I found that doing it with wire was going to be good enough for me, and I'll show you how exactly I did that really quick. It's just a regular spool of wire. I also picked this up at old Wally World earlier. Needle nose pliers. They got the wire cutter on them. Just cut yourself a length of wire. This will have kind of a sharp end after you cut it. You can use it just like a needle and just work it into the fabric until it comes up the other side. It could be a little bit difficult, but if you just stay persistent, it will work and you'll get all the way through. You know, you fold this blanket over a few times, you're going to have multiple layers to push through. I'm just going to show you the general concept because I basically already have this blanket ready to go and put into place, but I wanted to show the process for the camera, the technique that I'm using. So once it's all the way through all your layers, you just take your needle nose pliers, grab the end of the wire, and just roll it over on itself. And we're just basically trying to do anything to make it wide enough that the wire won't come back out and pull back through the layers of fabric. See, so now that we've done that, it kind of functions the same way that a safety pin was. All right, and we can do that on the other side. Again, just take the excess wire you have and just kind of roll it all up like this, and then that will just keep it from coming back through the other side. So if you don't have really big sturdy safety pins, this is a pretty good way to go. That's why I chose this method, because the safety pins that I did have were kind of small in size and not a very thick gauge wire. And I found a spool of wire in the store easier than I found safety pins. So there you go. It's a good life hack for you. So we have our whole blanket and it's about ready to become a cover for the door. And as you see, I got like 1, 2, 3 pieces of wire holding it together there. I got one along each side, and we can just pick the whole thing up and it will keep its shape, no problem. So that one's ready to go. I have another one ready to go, and that one's also going to be a cover for the door.
And we have the third blanket, and we're gonna have to figure out what size we're gonna need for the third blanket. So I'm sandwiched into the tight crevasse here. I just wanted to show you something really quick. You'll see that there's kind of a gap between these two panels. A little bit of daylight coming through there. So I think that I might get my caulk gun out and just shoot some caulk into this gap. And then when it's time to take these out, it'll be easy enough just to run a razor knife along the edge here and cut through the caulk and then remove it. But it's probably going to be a lot more soundproof if we seal up this gap. I'm a little bit hesitant about caulking along the bottom or along the top. You'll see there's still some light coming through on the top, but it'll be harder to make it look like we didn't do anything to the rental if we caulk from the window plug onto the existing drywall. So I want to avoid doing anything on these edges, but at least where the two panels meet each other, that's not going to do anything to go against the lease if we just caulk our own stuff onto our own stuff. So that's my plan for right now. Maybe we can get like a little strip of rubber, like weather stripping or something, that we can just kind of squeeze into this gap. That might work pretty well. But we're going to wait until after we do the sound test before we do anything more like that and before we buy anything else. So the next obvious question is, how are we going to hang these moving blankets from the wall without damaging anything? So, I mean, we got this Velcro industrial strength. Hopefully this is going to be sufficient for holding the weight of the moving blanket up there. I don't know if it weighs more than 10 pounds or not. We're kind of just going to try it and find out. I'm not really 100% convinced this is going to be a good solution, but we're going to find out. They are kind of proud of this product. It's about $30 worth of Velcro I'm holding right here in my hand. So hopefully it works. Otherwise, that's another decent little waste of money. But it's no big deal if it doesn't. We've only got 20 feet on this roll to work with, which really is not a lot in the greater scheme of things. I'm hoping that we can at least go across the top of the window and across the top of the doorway, and maybe do something else to go along the sides if we want it to seal up tight all the way around the window. I don't know, but we'll at least make it go across the top and at least get it up there on the wall and kind of figure it out after that. So we have our Velcro up and ready to hang up those curtains we made out of the moving blankets. And I also found some inexpensive weather stripping, so I just went ahead and I got that. And we're just filling up the gaps along the sides of the window plug. Did a little bit of caulking on the split between the two panels, just sealed it up really good. Just some cheap caulking, the Alex Plus. Good enough for what we're doing. If we ever need to remove this, which we will eventually, we'll just cut right through that with our razor knife and it'll come right apart. So the Velcro worked. We have the moving blankets up now. They're not too heavy for the Velcro. Nothing's coming separated, so the adhesive worked on both sides, on the walls and on the fabric. So great success there. We got the one up over the window. That's the big long one. That's all staying in place really good too. Add a little bit of extra Velcro so it can be stuck on the sides also. So this is going great. And let's set down the light here. This is our entryway into the studio space. We're gonna have lights in here eventually too, of course, but now we're just gonna do a little bit of a sound test. We're gonna put the Bluetooth speaker inside of here. We're going to turn on something really loud and really heavy. Then we're going to go walk outside and we're going to see how loud it is out in the yard, out in the alleyway. And one thing I'm really learning about living here in town is that all of my neighbors are yard care enthusiasts. They have been out there running lawnmowers and weed eaters all day. Since I've moved in here, it seems like these people are mowing their lawn every other day practically. It's constantly noisy in this neighborhood. We got trains going by all the time. We got dogs barking. It's a really noisy place. So far, from what I can tell, just today while I'm setting this up, it's a good amount of sound deadening for the lawnmower sounds out in the yard. Inside of this treated space so far, you can still hear the lawnmower, but it's much quieter than it would be otherwise. It's definitely much quieter than it would be if you were in a different room inside of the house. So what we've done so far is definitely working to some degree. It's definitely not going to be full-on soundproofing, but it's definitely doing a decent job of sound deadening. And there are certainly still a few tricks up my sleeve as far as more things that we can do on the cheap to make our setup a little bit better. But for now, we're just going to give it a test, and I'm not sure exactly how to show that on video, so I'm just going to test it out, and you'll just have to take my word for it. So I'm going to consider this mostly a success. I was blasting Mudvayne so loud in here that it hurt to be inside of the space. And I went and I stood out in the yard, and you could barely tell there was music playing in the front yard. I took a walk down the sidewalk and walked down the alleyway, and I mean, unless you were really paying attention, you wouldn't even be able to tell there was music happening inside of here. So I'm gonna say I'm pretty happy with the results. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is it completely 100% soundproof? No. But I think that it's going to be good enough for my purposes. It might be different when I actually start playing guitar or singing really loudly in here, but I generally try to keep the volume level so it's comfortable to listen to. And the music coming through my Bluetooth speaker was so loud that I didn't even want to be in here anymore. I didn't break out a decibel meter or anything like that to scientifically measure how loud the sound was inside of the space or how loud it was outside, but I don't think that it's going to bother anybody. And judging by the lawn mowers and stuff that were going on earlier today, I mean, you can still kind of hear stuff like that in here, but it's very faint, and we're going to figure out once we start using microphones inside of here whether the lawn mowing is going to be disruptive to the recording process. And as long as it's not getting picked up by the microphones, then I don't really mind it that much, you know. So yeah, we happy. Next thing we have to do is to work on a bit of acoustic treatment inside of here. And already we have the door, which is made up of the moving blanket, and that's working for a little bit of sound dampening in here. We have this foam pad that I picked up at Walmart the other day, and that's a little bit of dampening. But you know, when I get like really serious and I start putting up some serious sound absorbers up on the wall, that's probably going to make a much bigger difference. And I think that we're going to be able to really cut some of this echo that's happening inside of here. So we'll kind of see how that goes. I'm going to have to order some stuff and wait for it to get here, so that'll be a few more days. In the meantime, I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish building my computer desk and get everything kind of set up inside of here. One thing we also still need to do is we need to probably cut a little hole in the side of the wall close to the back of the computer desk. That way I can run some wires and plug into some outlets, because currently I don't have any way to do that without running an extension cord, and I would rather not have my PC and all of my good gear being run off of an extension cord. I would rather have that plug straight into the power conditioner and plug the power conditioner straight into the wall. That way there's nothing weird going on with the cord not being the right gauge and whatnot. You know, I don't know how smart you are about electrical stuff, but I know from personal experience that having the wrong kind of extension cord can be a problem in some cases, and I don't want anything problematic going on with the electricity. And in addition to the acoustic treatment and setting up the computer desk, I'm probably just going to go ahead and grab a couple more tubes of caulk and just make sure all of the gaps in the drywall and the framing are kind of sealed up from the outside. I'm going to give it a coat of paint on the outside. And I have a whole bunch of scrap pieces from the drywalling process, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and put those up on top of the roof of the enclosure and just give it a little bit more mass up top, just because it's going to be laying around in my garage not being used for anything regardless, so we might as well incorporate it in the design somewhere here. There's not really much going on up above here. It's just this one sheet of drywall for the ceiling and then the insulation on top of that. So we could put something up there, and I think that'd be a good place just to rest the drywall scraps. I'm not going to bother trying to screw them down or anything. I think that our soundproofing is already pretty much so good enough for my purposes. But you know, it's the little things that count, and as long as it's something that's going to be easy and inexpensive, then I'll kind of keep going here with the process. So We'll do a little bit of caulking, we'll do a little bit of painting, and we'll put the drywall up on top. And of course, the really fun part that we're only going to figure out as time goes by here is, will the rental agency have a problem with all this stuff being inside of their unit? I don't think they will. I think that we've done a pretty good job of keeping this pretty non-invasive and not damaging anything existing. You know, it probably just looks a little weird if someone saw it, if they weren't expecting to see something like this. But I think as far as I can tell, I've still followed all of the rules of the lease, no problem. The other question is, will we get a noise complaint? I don't think that it's loud enough outside for anybody to notice, let alone complain. If it got a little bit louder in here, you know, it wouldn't really sound like we were going crazy up inside of here. It would just sound like the music's a little bit loud. So I don't really foresee any issues with this. So you can kind of just assume that no news is good news, but if anything like that ever happens, I will be posting an update to this video, and, you know, maybe 6 months down the line, you might see a video pop up on my feed like, oops, I actually did get in trouble for my studio space, and I'll tell you all about what happened and why, but I don't foresee there being any problems. So if you don't see any updates like that on my channel, if you're watching this like a year from now into the future, if you don't see a follow-up video to this saying that I got in trouble, then you can assume that everything worked out great. So I've got my computer chair in here. I've been assembling the main bottom part of the desk. That's where the mouse and the keyboard are going to sit. And then there's going to be like an upper shelf on top of that. And that's where the computer monitor, the screen, and also the studio stereo monitors are going to sit. And those are going to be up at eye level and at ear level. And I can't stress how important of a step that is, placing your studio monitors in the right spot. I mean, don't just take my word for it. You can find this information anywhere out there on the internet. It's very vital to have them in the right place. So we want to make sure that the main speaker on the studio monitor, this speaker right here, is sitting directly at ear level when you are in a relaxed position at your computer desk. So I've got a totally goofy and silly method that I use to find the right spot and just make a mark on the wall. I have this T-square. It's used for drywall, and I thought this would be an innovative approach. So I just took the wide part of the T-square and put it up against the wall, and then just measured that back right to my face and line it up right at ear level. Okay, just like that. Make sure that the bottom edge of the T-square here is right at your ear level, because then we're going to go over here to the wall, right over here to this spot at the bottom, and make a mark. And that mark right there will show you the ideal speaker height. So what I actually did was I took my stereo monitor and I lined up the speaker with the mark that I made on the wall at ear level, and then I went down below and I made another mark, and that mark is to denote the bottom of the speaker and where that's supposed to go. And so from that bottom of the speaker mark, we can start figuring things out, like how thick is our plywood. Our plywood's about a 1/2 inch thick, so we can go down from our bottom of the speaker mark about a 1/2 inch, and then that will be the very top of the framing for that upper shelf. So I figured out that it needs to be about 11 inches up off the surface of the desk, and then have the 1/2 inch of plywood on top of it, and then that will give us enough room when we put the speaker up on top of that. It should be perfectly at ear level, and that's how that works. I didn't expect this video to become a trilogy, but we're just about to the 30-minute mark again, and there are still a few steps that we haven't covered yet. I hope you're all still with me and still having a good time. Like and subscribe, please, if you're feeling supportive, and join me in the next episode.